Hi, I'm Asia, and I'm from POPPYN. I'm not here to lease an apartment, but what I am here to do is inform you about what happened 50 years ago at the former Board of Education building. In 1967, over 3,000 students walked out of their classrooms to pressure the Philadelphia School District into fulfilling a plethora of their demands. Years later, in 2020, 5 students from Masterman High School petitioned the PHMC, Pennsylvania's history agency, to create a historical marker representing and recording the event. In order to understand this plaque, we gotta go back in time. Before the 1967 walkouts, Black students in the district started to push for demands regarding the representation and treatment of the Black community in the school system. Students pushed for African Americans to be able to wear their natural hair and ethnic garbs. They also wanted more Black representation in the school district's workforce and for African American history courses to be required in Philly schools. Some schools around the city, like Saul Agricultural High School, locked their doors, preventing the students from leaving and attending the walkout. A small collection of police were disguised at the rally. Eventually, negotiations between a small group of student organizers and school board leadership seemed to sway in favor of student demands, leading to a growth in morale amongst the protesters. Eventually, the acting lieutenant on the scene called for backup, leading Frank Rizzo, the police commissioner at the time, to drive over from City Hall with 100 brand new officers. These newly sworn-in police officers quickly escalated the situation, with police officers attacking and arresting the student protesters. High school students were thrown into the street and beaten bloody. Later, Rizzo would send out a request for another 300 officers. This act of police brutality inflicted on high school students is gut-wrenching. The police department would claim that the protesters were already violent by the time they had arrived, but witnesses and the Board of Education said otherwise. Why are the 1967 protests important? We spoke to Ishmael Jimenez, a former public school teacher and the director of social studies curriculum, to learn more.
And you can't talk about what happened in 1967 without contextualizing it within the Black Power movement and also contextualizing it in the real organizing that happened outside of school buildings at the same time. I think about, folks who are still around that can tell us these stories.
Just imagine your children. Many had never been in a demonstration at all in their lives, going to the Board of Education just to voice their concerns. I was standing on the side and I heard Earl Van plead with Rizzo to tell him not to attack the children. Earl Van said, "They're only children." Rizzo said, "Get their asses."
We need to be honest with that history, but also I think the examples of solidarity, the examples of going out your way and imagining something that did not exist. And then those students taking the initiative and then even developing their own vision of what they wanted to see the school district. Now you fast forward, you have a situation in Philadelphia where a lot of those folks became educators, became politicians, and then also became able to influence the way decision making was happening. So the demands they even made in 1967 still apply to the situations that exist today.
How did these demands pan out years later? The student organizing resulted in most of the demands being met, one of which nearly came 40 years after the walkouts. In 2005, the Philadelphia School District became the first major city in the country to mandate an African American history course as a requirement to graduate. Ms. McKinney, a social studies teacher at Central, shares her perspective teaching Black history.
So I think because it's a mandated subject that people are, even those who wouldn't have necessarily on their own taken the course, the fact that they're exposed to this information that in many cases they may not have known about or not even thought about questioning or wanting to know about, that can change their perspective. Kids of all races and ethnicities, in my experience, they want to learn. They want to learn that truth. And this backlash is that, they're saying that the children feel bad and feel guilty. I haven't had that experience, with students who are, not, BIPOC students. They don't take on that guilt or responsibility, because that's not their guilt or responsibility for what happened in the past. But you definitely we have to see what happened in the past and what's going on in the present. And if there are issues in the present, which there are, then what are we going to do about that?
While there have been some local efforts to improve curriculum, Black representation in the district has still been lacking. The percentage of Black teachers has gone down drastically in the last 20 years, despite nearly 50% of the student body being Black. In a lot of ways, some folks feel like we're still fighting the same fights decades later. On top of city and statewide divestment in education, there is also a federal pressure to gut the education system and push back against culturally responsive curriculum. Currently, the city is also facing proposed school closures reminiscent of the 2013 budget cuts, which devastated many students, families, and communities across the city. Additional closures means more overcrowded classrooms, larger gaps in the student-to-teacher ratio, and less individual instruction, which is crucial to student success. Those who came before us created pathways for students to fight for a future we deserve, and we should continue their legacy. One of the 5 Masterman students who advocated for the historical marker, Tatiana Bennett, was quoted saying, "You see youth organizing at protests on social media, telling their peers to use their voices. In 1967, we saw the same thing. Now that you know a little more about the history of youth activism in the city, how will you take action in your school and community?" Once again, I'm Aisha, and that's what's poppin'.